Hey, what do you say? This is Boss and Men Speaking Out, and I am here with author Tom Attig to discuss his wonderful book. And Tom, actually, I was really, I was really moved by your wisdom. You know, the title of your book, "Wisdom in Death Shadows," right? It really made me think about a few things. But before I get going, I want to kind of tell the listeners a little bit about you, and about this, and about us, right?
Thank you.
Excuse me. By the way, listen, sorry about that. Okay, we're at episode 91, and I am joined with Tom Attic. We're talking about grieving. Do we really know how to? And I'm going to give you a little history of my guest here. Tom Attic grew up in the Midwest and earned his philosophy degree from Northwestern University and Washington University in St. Louis. He taught at Bowling Green State University for nearly 25 years, chaired the department for 11 years, and established the first PhD in applied philosophy in 1987. In 1985, he became an independent philosopher, professor emeritus. I hope I'm saying that right. Maybe
Emeritus.
emeritus. Okay, there you go, Tom.
Yeah.
Thank you. Tom serves as president of the Association for Death Education, Counseling, and vice chair of the International Work Group on Death, Dying, and Bereavement. He is recognized speaker, presenting conferences, programs, talks, workshops internationally to diverse professional and public audiences. Welcome, Tom.
It's good to be here. Thank
Yes,
you.
glad you could join us on Men Speaking Out. Um, just kind of want to get a little pregame. Did I miss anything? First of all, did I? I know I said a lot there, but did I miss anything?
Well, there's a whole life that could be described, but you got to the why should somebody want to listen to me part of it, which is good. That's enough.
That's enough. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, once again, we're talking about experience the loss of loved ones can be overwhelming. I'm sure we all have lost someone near and dear to us in our lives, and maybe some of us are still dealing with that pain and suffering. Whether it's a friend or a family member, their absence deeply affect us, especially when they played a significant role in our lives. So, how do we adapt to that, right? How do we continue to handle difficult times in their absence? How do we make do and get over the hump, so to speak? Well, Men Speaking Out today is joined by Tom, and he is here to give us a bit more about his book, Wisdom in Death Shadows: Collective Writings on How We Grieve. Once again, Tom, thank you very much for being here.
It's good to be here. I'm known for starting to emphasize how grieving is not simply what happens to us, the suffering that comes over us, the sorrow that we feel, the way we feel like we've been punched in the gut.
Mhm.
We've we can hardly catch our breath because it's such a big blow that we've suffered. Um, Grieving is also active. It's what we do in response to what's happened to us. It's not simply feeling emotions or in now I think pretty much left behind us view of grieving as going through 5 stages. Um, that may happen when someone is dying, and we feel that we want to deny it or pretend it's not happening, or we get angry, or we try to bargain our way through it or manage something that really can't be managed. And then we feel depressed, and finally we come around to, yes, this is really happening. Well, there's no mystery about someone's having died. Typically, we get to see them dead, either at home or in some other setting, or at
Mhm.
a funeral home or in a church. And we don't go through anything like those Kubler-Ross 5 stages. Um, I used to teach death and dying for a long time, and one of the things I did was ask my students to write about their 3 most important loss experiences in their entire lives.
Mhm.
And I read thousands of these descriptions. No one ever talked about going through stages. What they talked about was, how am I going to go on living now? this person that I love isn't here with me anymore. What am I going to do with the stuff she left behind in the closet? How am I going to sit down with dinner with my family and there's an empty chair? I don't know if I can go to church and sit in that same place where she used to be there and she's not
Hmm.
there anymore. Um, I don't know what to do with the stuff in the closet. I don't know how to raise my children alone. I don't know how to talk to my grandmother. She's just lost her husband, and I've never been in this kind of situation. I'm dealing with my grandfather's having died, but there's all this other stuff that's happening all at once. And I finally came around to my students and I said, it's more like having to relearn how to live in a world
Hmm.
that's radically changed. And you're really puzzled. You're stopped in your tracks because you don't know where to begin. And
Hmm.
there's so much to contend with all at once. And I fed them that back as a description of what they were telling me. And to a person, they said, that's exactly right. And none of us is experiencing the world the same way as anybody else in this room.
Hmm.
And none of us has exactly the same challenges to work our way through. Um, and it's just so hard and it's so big. It's not just one little change or even a big change, but it's a whole bunch of changes all at once. And as I went on to describe what grieving as relearning the world is all about, I said, you've got your physical surroundings to find your way around in. You've got your social surroundings where other people are also affected, but not the same way. And how are you going to live with these people? Some of whom are maybe hurting worse than you are. Um, and you've got uh, trying to orient yourself in the sort of greater scheme of things. How do I fit here? Is I thought God was a good God, but He allows this. How am I going to deal with my religion? Do I believe the same stuff now that this has happened?
Hmm.
Um, and it goes on and on. And we have to reorient ourselves in our everyday lives, which is hard. And we have to kind of enter a future for ourselves that's quite different than we thought it was going to be because a major player is no longer here. How do I go? Do I want to continue going to school? Do I want to continue working? Um, how am I going to take care of these kids now that my spouse isn't here anymore?
Right.
Um, what's their future going to be like? I've got responsibilities to them. I'm not sure I'm ready to do that. And I thought I had a partner, and my partner seems to have left. It's that kind of a thing. It's really big. And people talk about closure, and that's just nonsense. You are never going to stop missing this person who died, and you're never going to stop loving them. And one of the core things in grieving is learning how to make the move from loving someone while they're present to continue loving them now that they're no longer here. How are you going to remember them?
Mm.
How are you going to be inspired by them? How are you going to live in ways that they taught you now that your teacher's no longer here and you can't check with the teacher about what they really had in mind?
Right.
It's this big thing, and that's what my writing's all about.
Well, I tell you, I definitely, like I said, once again, we've all have lost someone we loved and that was near and dear to us, whether friend, family, loved one, whomever it is. And, it's like in the very beginning, for some of us, I can't speak for everyone out there. I'm just kind of giving some personal experiences here. It seems like, we're really big on making sure, that we keep that memory alive for a short period of time. Right, right. We may go visit the gravesite, or we celebrate, and happy heavenly birthday post and stuff like that on social media. But after a
Yeah.
while, it dies down. Right. Not to say that we don't care about that individual or that we don't miss them, but we don't give it the attention that it truly deserves, especially if it was someone like a mother or a father. You know, who helped raise you, right, and put you in the position to be successful where you are today. And I see it all the time. And then we become numb, and then life goes on. However, you said something that was instrumental to me here a second ago, how we need to continue to love that individual even when they're not here.
I think that's a core understanding. I've written a whole book about that called The Heart of Grief, Death and the Search for Lasting Love. And I've met people who are caught up in sorrow, and they want to be free of the sorrow. They don't want to be feeling the pain that they feel, but they don't know what to do with it. And I really think beneath the level of the sorrow that you're feeling, there is not simply a desire to be free of the sorrow, to get away from the sorrow. There's a desire to continue loving the person who has died. And people mistakenly say you can't love someone if they're not physically present in your life. And I would ask you and your audience, when you came to this podcast and this interview with me, or when you came to being a part of the audience for this podcast, did you bring everyone you love who's alive now with you? Are they physically in the room with you? I don't see anybody in your studio. I doubt
Yeah,
that you have your whole family and all of your friends in the studio with you.
correct.
The next question is, did you stop loving them when you left them this morning or this afternoon? And do
Not at
you
all.
think they stopped loving you when you left them? No. We know a lot about how to love people when they're not in the room. Just think about how you do it. You talk about them. You
Yes.
think about them. You feel for them. You wish them well in what they're doing now. You feel encouraged by them. They got you that training at Ohio State, and they helped you become skilled enough so you can do a podcast like this and reach out to others and so on. Someone inspired that, but they weren't in the room with you all the time while that was happening. They can still inspire you to be a good guy doing your work, and they can inspire anybody to be good at what they do. They wanted them to go to school, they helped them
Hmm.
go to school,
Hmm.
and now they want you to be using what you've learned even if they're not around. And you can feel inspired by them even though they're not around. That's a better feeling than feeling pain at missing them. And almost everything that's really important to you that your parents gave you, or your friends, or your now dead minister, or your best teachers gave to you, you still have. And you can feel better if you remember and embrace and try to live in terms of the best that they gave you.
Hmm.
And that's a better place to be than in the depths of sorrow. You're still going to miss them, and it's still
Sure.
going to hurt. But
Sure.
that's not the whole story.
It's interesting because a couple years ago, my mom and my father they both passed. Shall I say with the glory, 8 months apart.
Ah,
Right, 8
yeah.
months apart. Literally, my mom 2019, my dad 2020. And however, I thought it was a honorable thing for me to do a podcast. I did one show about my dad, and I did one show about my mom. Right,
There you
so
go.
I wanted to make sure that the foundation they laid upon me and my brothers was shared with the world, right?
Well, and it's still there, and you know your brothers, and it sounds like they're good men too.
Most of the time, yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, brothers are brothers. Okay, but when you see the good in your brothers, you can pause for a moment and say, mom and dad helped them be the way they are.
There you go.
Thanks, mom. Thanks, dad. And you
There
can
you
do that until you can't take your last breath.
Yeah. So what about that, right? So that kind of brings a question. Like when people, and of course, obviously, if this is a question you can't answer, I totally respect that. But like my parents, they were together 50 plus years, 50 years, married, good, bad, and different. However, my mom got sick and she went first. And then my dad, you could see him go through like I lost my best friend stage.
Yeah.
I could see it, right?
Mhm.
And of course he transitioned later on. And I was just like, wow, dad lost his best friend, right? But we have to keep that memory going for the foundation that we learned upon them both, right? So
No.
it's just it just bothers me sometimes people forget about that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a terrible waste if people figure like if I'm done with the worst of my grieving, um, and dad's in the past, mom's in the past. That's a waste. They can still inspire you. They have inspired you. You live better if you remember that and honor them along the way, and just honor them by being better at the podcast because they made you a better podcaster,
There you go.
made you a better parent. They were good to you in the ways they were, and you picked up on the best of them, and you're doing that with your kids. And you've got some better ideas about other things you might want to do that you wished your parents had done. But they didn't do nothing, they did plenty, and you wouldn't be here without them.
There you go. I like that. I like that. They didn't do that. They did plenty. They sure did. And as a matter of fact, listeners, if you go to menspeakingout.com, and believe it or not, at the bottom of the page, it says this website is dedicated to my parents. It says it right there all day, all day.
And do you feel good about having that there?
I sure do. I'm smiling from cheek to cheek now. Yes, yeah. I sure do. I sure do. Kind of want to pivot and tilt a little bit and kind of talk about the wisdom and the death shadows, right? Your book, right? Because you got 5 chapters, I believe, what I'm thinking.
5 big parts, yeah.
5 big parts, right?
Yep.
And you talk about my search for wisdom begins, right? The very first one, right? And this is, of course, a few sub bullet points: grief and personal integrity and relearning the world. And so, and how would you sum up the first part, right? My search for wisdom begins.
I'll do it as fast as I can. When I was growing up, my mother was one of 9. My father was one of 10. Okay. They had lots of relatives. I had, in my lifetime, I've buried more than 30 aunts and uncles. I buried my grandmother. I buried both of my parents. These are background experiences for me. When I was growing up, my dad's family was older than my mother's family. He was 18 years older than her. And his family started dying while I was growing up, and I'm a small kid. And people didn't travel as much as they do now then. So if a remote, a few states away relative died, a letter would come explaining what happened and talking about the funeral and what the guy was like and how he died. And my mother wouldn't just take that letter and share it with my dad. She read it out loud to the family. So I heard stories about people dying from the time I was able to understand stories. By the time I was 4 years old, I knew that my Aunt Katie was dying in Pontiac, and we were going to go down there for a funeral after she died. I attended my first funeral when I was about 5. When people were dying in my mother's family in the Chicago area, she would take me to the hospital, and I would engage with my Aunt Clara or my Uncle Leo and watch them in some of their last days of living. This didn't happen in every family, but it kind of disposed me to understand some of what's going on, and I learned more and more as I got older. I wanted to be a teacher. My brother turned out to be a teacher. My favorite people were my teachers, and they were good at it. So when I went off to Northwestern, I thought I'd be a math teacher because I was really good at math.
Okay.
I got 800s on my SATs and things like that.
Nice.
And I watched what it was like to be a math teacher. I thought I really wanted to teach in high school, maybe college, but teaching people trigonometry that they didn't want to learn year after year didn't look to me like a good career option.
Mm-hmm.
But my brother was a history teacher, and I thought the humanities. In those courses, you get to talk to one another,
Mm-hmm.
and you can vary the subject matter quite a bit. So I decided to study history and literature and philosophy in my second year. And if I did well in something or especially liked it, I'd do that. Turned out to be philosophy. And philosophy is, by definition, the love of wisdom. And I studied phenomenology, which is um, the source of wisdom about the nature of experiences that you describe and interpret, and existentialism, which is about the search for living a meaningful life that you recognize to be finite and limited. And I was trained in that. I went off to teach at Bowling Green. They were setting up a new College of Health and Human Services, which was going to feature programs in nursing, gerontology, social work, child and family development. And I thought some of my colleagues are teaching applied courses in medical ethics and business ethics and philosophy of law and so on. I think I could teach a course on death and dying. I don't know all that much about it, but I know enough so I can work up to it. I was going to teach a lot of ethics in death and dying, abortion and suicide and
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
killing and war and so on. Then I thought the professionals these people are going to become aren't going to be dealing with those problems so very much. They're going to have a hard time going into a room where someone's dying. They're going to have a hard time telling someone that their loved one didn't survive the procedure. They're going to have to know how to understand what's happening in families that are kind of falling apart in front of their eyes as someone's dying. So I became a one-man death and dying band, and I read in psychology and sociology and history and literature about death and dying, and I started teaching the subject. I didn't tell you, while I was in graduate school, my father died, and he was 73 at the time, and I wasn't really bent out of shape, but what I wanted a lot was someone to talk to, just about what it was like to have
Yeah.
this experience.
Yeah.
And as I was driving back to graduate school, I thought about all my philosophy professors, and I probably shortchanged some of them because I didn't know them as well as I could have. But it didn't seem to me like they were going to be people I wanted to approach to talk to.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to myself, I'm going to be a philosophy professor. I want to be the kind of guy where they want to come to my office and talk about serious things that have happened in their lives. All of that was background. I started teaching the course. I learned from my students what they were really experiencing, and I started writing about it. I wanted wisdom about living a mortal life. I wanted them to help them find that wisdom, to face some of the difficult decisions that people have to make, to care for the dying, and to care for the bereaved, people who are grieving. And I learned from them. I learned from my studies, and the first thing I wrote was about grief and personal integrity. The second thing I wrote was about the phenomenology of grieving as relearning the world, the kind of thing I was talking
Yeah.
to you about before.
Sure.
And I've been doing that ever since. And the book is full of stuff that came later.
Yeah. Well, you definitely have, some heavy hitters in here, aspect of self and grieving and caregiving and death shadows and harvesting wisdom. I mean, I'm looking right at it right now, right? So it's like, okay, I got to do some. You're gonna make me do a deeper dive into the book myself because once again, we all deal with it, right? We all deal with grieving in some sort of way, but and sometimes we just get numb, like I mentioned earlier. But my question to you is, how does the death of a loved one take our breath away?
Well, it's so big. And it's so powerful.
Mhm.
It, in sort of one blow, it unravels the shape of your life, and it clouds the history, where you're going to go next. And it feels so bad. It's like, do I really want to breathe into what comes next? This is bad enough, and I'm not doing so well. It's like somebody punched you in the gut,
Yeah.
or someone poured cold water over you, and it's you. I mean, you can't catch your breath, and it's a metaphor that turns out to have a heck of a lot of appeal when you think about it. And then you think of grieving as a process of catching your breath. But when you've been hit with an overwhelming blow, and when feelings, deep feelings, flood over you, it just stops you in your tracks.
Mm-hmm. Question. Of course, adults and children deal with grieving differently, obviously, right?
Yeah.
Some of us have experienced, death from, other, like you said, you buried, 30 aunts and uncles or members of your family.
Yeah.
However, let's say, for a child to lose a mother or father,
Mm-hmm.
and there might be some behavioral challenges that we have to deal with from the school and attitudes and just getting furious and mad and so forth. How does one deal with that when it comes to a child? Because you're lucky to get communication out of that child. Say, do you want to talk about it? Are you okay? And they can totally isolate themselves from being even talked to. How do we
I
deal with that?
Can I tell you a story to illustrate of someone
Sure,
quite successfully dealing with a distressed child?
sure.
Okay, I met the funeral director who helped this family. Um, this couple were expecting a baby. They had a 3-year-old little girl who was going to be that baby's sister. Um, they took the mom to the hospital a bit early, didn't explain too much to the child, anticipated bringing the ill child back home. And the little sister that she was planning to have died in the hospital.
Oh wow.
And they came home
Oh wow.
without that little girl. And the little girl asked, what happened? Well, this is the explanation they offered. Your little sister um, didn't make it, is what they said, kind of vague, not specific.
Hmm.
Um, your little sister is with Jesus now. All right. 3-year-olds don't understand that kind of abstraction,
Right.
but that's what they knew to tell her.
Hmm.
The little girl started acting out. This ain't right. I mean, this is not the way my world is supposed to be turning out. I don't understand exactly what it is to be with Jesus. Where's my little sister? The parents didn't know what to do, but they did know that there was a pretty effective funeral director in town, and they had to make funeral arrangements. So they went to this fellow. It was in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, as it happens. And my friend Roy was the funeral director. And they said they needed someone to help them with the funeral, for one. And they mentioned the little girl. And she's really distressed. Do you ever do any work with little kids? They asked. Yes, I do that quite often. What have you told her and what's she doing? Well, she's acting out. She's screaming and yelling and crying and upset and just agitated.
Mm.
We don't know what to do. Well, what have you told her? Well, we told her, as we believe, that the little sister is with Jesus. Okay. He's had experiences like this before. He said, I think I need to be introduced to your daughter. Would it be okay if I came to your home so she could meet me where she's comfortable, not in a strange place?
Sure.
And they say yes. They arrange for him to come by the house after dinner that night. So it's like 6:30, 7 o'clock. And he comes and they sit around the kitchen table, and the little girl's kind of in the corner. She's not sitting with them, but she's listening. So they talk for a while. And they mention the little girl who's died, and so on. And he kind of motions for her to come over. Would you like to sit with us? No, she doesn't do that. He tries several times. Finally, he says, do you know how to draw? Do you have any crayons? Do you have some paper where, would you like to draw with me?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'd like to do that. So she gets the crayons and the paper, and the parents slide down to the end of the table, and the two of them are at the other end of the table. And he says, why don't we just draw some animals? I saw a dog on my way here tonight. Let me draw that dog. He draws it, folds the picture of the dog, puts it on the table off to the right. Could you draw a picture of an animal? Sure. And she draws another dog, and he draws a squirrel, and she draws a cat, and he draws a chicken, and she draws a cow. He says, have you ever seen a dead animal? Well, yeah. I saw a dead squirrel today. Let me draw one. He draws that, puts the dead squirrel over here as opposed to over here where the live animals are. Have you ever seen a dead animal that you could draw? Yeah, I saw a mouse the other day, and she draws a mouse, and that one goes over there. They take turns picking whether they want to draw live ones or dead ones, and they're filling up the table with these things. And finally, he says, do you know about Jesus? Do you know what Jesus looks like? Yeah, well, could you draw a picture of Jesus? Oh, she draws a picture. Where does Jesus go? With the live animals or the dead animals? She says, I don't know. Well, why don't we put him in the middle? And they draw some more animals. And finally he says, I heard you have a little sister. Yes, I do.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think you could draw your little sister? I know you never saw her, but you have an idea of what that little girl must look like? Yeah. Where does your little sister belong? Immediately with the dead animals. Not with Jesus, not with the live. He knows at this point she understands what dead means. It's
Right.
different.
Right.
Okay. And she understands that her sister has died. So he says, I've got your little sister at my place. It's called a funeral home. Can I see her? She says. And he says, it would be okay with me, but we should ask your parents. Would they be comfortable in your seeing your little sister?
Mm-hmm.
And the short of it is, yes. And he says, would it be okay if your parents brought you down to the funeral home? Would they be willing to bring her down bring you down so you could see your sister? I'd like that, she says. Let's go. And he says, no, it's late at night, and I want you to think about it, but we could do that tomorrow. And if you will, do your parents agree that it's okay for you to come down? They do. All right. Do you know how to use a telephone? And there used to be phones where you actually dial.
Yeah, rotary. Yeah.
Could you show me that you know how to dial a number? And she does. And he says, you think about whether you want to see your sister or not. And if tomorrow morning when you wake up, you want to see her, you call me and I'll ask you if you dialed or if your parents dialed for you, because I want this to be your decision.
Right.
At about 6:30, he gets a phone call. She's up and she has dialed. And he says, did you dial? I did. My parents are still asleep. Well, we could wait until they wake up, or if you think they'd be okay with you waking them up, we can talk about your coming down here later. They bring her down to the place. In his entranceway, he's got a corner of the room that's devoted to children's toys. She comes in, she says, where's my little sister? He says, she's behind that door over there in another nice room. It's like a living room. And she's in a box in there, but you can see her. Oh, she says. And then she goes for the toys, and she plays with the toys. Then she comes and she says, take me in to see my sister now. And he says, we can go in to see your sister, but I want it to be your decision. So when you're ready, if you want to see her, you take my hand and lead me into the room, and we can go and see her. So they go into the room. They can see her across the room. She's in this open small casket. Take me over there, she says. And he says, no, I want this to be your decision. You take me. Okay, so she takes him over. She sees her dead sister. She says, oh, she's not dead. She's asleep. And he says, have you ever tried to wake somebody up when they're asleep? Yes. Well, look, your sister is, he shakes her, the little sister. She's dead. She's not asleep. The little girl says, you're not doing it right. He says, you try. She tries, and she says, you're right. She's dead. When do we bury her? And he explains a little bit about there's going to be a funeral the next day. There'll be a lot of people there. We'll have a chance to remember your sister together and so on. And your parents can bring you there if you want to come, if they want to do it. Do you want to bring her? Yes, we'll bring her. The next day she comes. He invites her to join him in the hearse to drive the little girl to the cemetery. And she says, yeah, I want to ride with you. And when they get to the cemetery, there's an open grave, and the girl is ready to be put in the grave in her little casket. She supervises the burial, and when she goes home, she is not acting out anymore. She knows what has happened, and she's been a part of it, and she's been invited to be a part of it, and to see for herself. And a little child doesn't understand complex explanations about being with Jesus. Their parents can get to them later with that when they're grown up enough to understand.
Right.
But she's oriented, and she did it herself. It was her choices, and she felt it with her senses. She saw it with her own eyes. She participated. She was embraced by other people who welcomed her and encouraged her and comforted her and explained to her what had really happened. You can do things like that with little children. I hope that story helped.
No, it does. We never think about, the impact of losing a loved one to children. However, the takeaways I got from that story is she was a part of the process.
Yeah.
Right. She was part of the process. And when you say, well, they're going to be with so-and-so or going to be with so-and-so, to some degree, a child might receive that and they might not. However, making them a part of the process, I believe, maybe gives them a much better understanding of everything involved, right? And
kids at that age orient with their own senses.
Yeah, their own two eyes, exactly, their own two eyes. So, man, that kind of goes into another question, right? What view suggests that grief is just suffering that comes over us when a loved one dies, right?
And it isn't. I mean, let's put it this way: a little bit of technical vocabulary, but not complicated.
Yeah.
The sorrow coming over us is grief reaction. It's how we don't choose these feelings that come over us. They just come. and your gut can hurt and your body can hurt, and you can be crying and weeping and so on. You're not sitting there. I think I'll cry now because I think that's a right thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
You just do it. It spontaneously comes over you. That's what a reaction is.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And relearning how to live in the world involves making choices. When am I going to go into that room? Why am I going to go into that room? What do I hope to accomplish? Do I just want to sit and weep for a while and then go away because I've had enough of that room and maybe come later and so on? And you have a whole life with the folks you share your home with.
Right.
You have a home to find your way into the rooms that are there. You have choices about when you go to bed. You have choices about whether you go to bed where you used to sleep with someone, but now it would be sleeping alone, or do I go somewhere else to sleep
Mm-hmm.
this time and for a while? You have all kinds of choice. You don't have any choices about how you react. All you have about how you respond is choices. When do I do this? How do I do it? Do I do it alone or with somebody else? How often do I do it? Where do I do it? All of the relearning of the world stuff is active engagement with the world in the light of what's happened to you. And an awful lot of thought about grief and loss is about what happens to you. And if you see it as nothing but sorrow, there's no point to it. If you see the sorrow as something that speaks to you about the meaning of what's happened to you, or um, about how your world's different now and you're going to have to change how you live in it,
Mm-hmm.
and the like. Uh, and then when you're ready, grieving is really about that relearning how to live in the world. And you try small steps first, and sometimes try a big one and it works out, or it doesn't quite work out. I guess I got to break this down into something smaller. Um, and I'm crying, for heaven's sake, about what's happened. How about maybe I remember a little bit about mom? And what would mom think of me just sitting
Right.
here crying?
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
what would
Yeah.
dad think about me just sitting
Yeah.
here crying? Come on,
Yeah.
boy, what do you want to do now, given that I'm not here? Would I? Do you think I would want you to just sit here crying? No, Dad, and that no, I wouldn't.
Yeah.
Well, what can I do? Dad, you got an idea? I mean,
Yeah.
you might actually kind of pray to your mom or your grandma or
Yeah.
whatever. What would she do? What would
Yeah.
she tell me to do? And then you start moving in some way or another.
Yeah. It's interesting because my mom used to always say, well, she had a bunch of sayings, but she would always say, use your head for more than a hat rack. Basically, she's saying, I need for you to think.
Yeah.
you know, don't wear a hat. Use your head for more.
Yeah.
It does more than just wear skull caps and baseball caps.
That's
Use your head
right.
for more than a hat rack, right? So that's the phrase I always say when I run into a challenge. Like, man, well, mom, she would
Well,
say, yeah,
I
think
think
about
what happens is we have choices, and we're afraid that we're going to make the wrong choices. So we're kind of paralyzed. And we've never had to make some of these choices. So we
it.
have kind of self doubts. I think one of the things that can really help us is to think about, what might mom suggest? What might dad suggest?
Yeah. Hmm.
What would my brother think if I tried this? Would he want me to give it a shot?
Sure.
Or would he want me to just suffer forever? Well, I know there's a part of him who would like me to suffer forever. That's not the best part of him. And he's been most of the time a pretty good brother. And he would want me to be happy eventually and get off of my butt, and start doing things again. Not big things at first, but something. Maybe just go and talk to mom about me, and tell some stories about me. That'd be a good thing to start, wouldn't it?
Right.
Or go to the funeral and see what happens there. See if that helps you in some way.
Well,
Um,
sometimes death and from what I've experienced in some of my journey, is that it has the ability to break up a family,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah.
Some folks
Well,
go left, go right. It breaks up the family
yeah,
because, but why, right? I mean, people may
well,
feel you could have did this differently. Mom liked you more, dad of this. It's just a lot of foolishness at the end of the day.
well, I mean, people can behave foolishly. People can be impatient with one another. When if there's ever been a time to be patient with your siblings or with your parents or with your grandparents when somebody close to them has died, now's the time, as opposed to it's my way or the highway, or all of this is stupid, or a bunch of real fast conclusions about a situation that's as fluid as any situation you're ever going to meet in your life. And owning the truth about what you're experiencing, this hurts so much, I'm really not ready to talk about it, will be much better to do and say than, look, we've got to shut up about this. There's no point in talking about it. Let's get on. Let's have a big picnic tomorrow. You knucklehead, what are you doing?
Right,
We're
right.
in a completely different place. Let's slow down. Let's do it gently. Let's do it patiently and quietly for a while, just to realize this is big. This isn't little. And you may be a knucklehead most of the time, but this is not the time to be the knucklehead. All
I,
right.
I have a question for you. This is dealing around the healing process, right? So basically, but I'm going to give you a little background before I really ask the question. All
Yeah.
right. Few years ago, I lost my nephew in Atlanta. Um, he was murdered, and God rest his soul. And my sister has never really, his mother, she's
Mm.
never really recovered from that. Now, my nephew, mind you, he was, early 40s, maybe 40, probably age 40 when it happened.
Uh-huh.
He was robbed, and he was someone took his life. However, she would say to me as her little brother, his uncle, and my other brothers, well,
Yeah.
you all should have been more, you should have been closer to him. You should have been, if you understand where I'm going with this, basically saying, well, he's where he is because you all didn't spend enough time with him as a child around you. So it's a lot of this finger pointing,
Yeah.
right? And so our response was like, well, you know, he was a grown man who made certain decisions. And I'm not saying that we weren't empathetic or understanding. However, you saying, well, you all should have did this, and you should have did this, and you should have did that. And it's like, sis, we want to be here for you. We want to be here to love on you and to show you that we're here. But we can't be there for you if it's like always a constant finger pointing session, right?
Yeah.
It's tough. It's tough. And he passed in 2022. Here's 2026. So at the end of the day, we love him. We miss him dearly. However, it's kind of tough to be around someone who's constantly pointing the finger for something that we didn't. I mean, I'm in Indiana. I mean, I'm like, I'm not even around this young man on a daily basis.
Yeah.
So it was really tough. It was really tough. And she
Well,
actually shut herself down from her siblings because of it. And even
yes.
to this day, there's still not conversation 4 years later.
Um, I don't mean this to be harsh by any
No, please.
means, but there are people ride through life like they're on different buses, and she's on a different bus.
Mhm.
Um, she would live much better if she could find a way. If she really thinks you're responsible, she needs help to find a way to be forgiving. and you want her to be forgiving. And you kind of have to forgive her for being off a track or off on
Absolutely.
the track that she is, because she's obviously desperate and she's needing something from you that it would be very hard for you to give her. And she needs some advice from a
Mm-hmm.
kind of a neutral party that
Mm-hmm.
she would have no way to find a reason to blame them. Um, she has to realize that humans are limited. Um, People get into life circumstances that are dangerous where maybe she's feeling like she didn't recognize that, but somebody else should have.
Mm-hmm.
And she's as responsible as you are, and ultimately, none of you are. He's living a life that has some dangers in it
Mm-hmm.
that he'd underestimated or didn't recognize. And what those other people did is where her concern should be.
Mm-hmm.
And she's not helping anyone by blaming people who had nothing to do with it.
Right.
Um, my wife and I attended a CME church for about 7 or 8 years when we lived in California. Christian Methodist Episcopalian.
Mm-hmm.
It's black. It's a black church. There was, I don't think, a single family in that church over the 8 years that we were in that church that didn't experience or hadn't experienced a murder in the family. It is a terrible cultural heritage having to do with where people are living and with whom they're living and with whom they associate themselves. And a lot of all of that that leads to these things happening are choiceless events. No one chooses to live with dangerous people,
Mm-hmm.
and so on. And no one chooses to not recognize how dangerous some people are,
Mm-hmm.
and blaming them for that just compounds the agony that you're already experiencing.
Right. Right. We're all suffering. We're all going through it, right? So
Yeah.
and you know that the silver lining in this is that I was able to do a podcast with him. So I
Ah,
got him on. I got him on video and audio. So I was
ah.
able to capture a moment in time, like a time and date stamp of him and
Uh-huh.
I talking like you and I are talking on a podcast.
Uh-huh. Well, that
So
has to be wonderful. Does she,
yes,
has she watched it?
uh, I sent her the link, whether she watched it or not. She has full access to all the shows as anyone else does. The same thing with my dad as well. I captured him on a podcast as well. So you know, it's we love her dearly. Number one, right? I
Yeah.
want to make sure I'm very crystal clear on that. And we are her little brothers from here to the end of time.
Yeah.
However, you know, we have to, like I mentioned before, how may we understand grieving as a healing process? That's the
Well,
question,
that's
right?
absolutely what it is. It makes you whole again in your daily life. It makes you whole again in the relationships with the people who survive with you. It makes you whole again in a loving relationship that continues behind and beyond the death of the person that you're loving. And it returns you to a sense of having choice about your future, where the best in you can try to embody in how you live from here on. I have another story. I was giving a kind of a talk to a group informally, I think in a church one night, and we had a beginning session, then a break, and then the end. And I was talking about loving people after they've died. And this fellow came up to me and he said, I loved my son dearly, but he killed himself. And it took me a long time to come to terms with that. I thought if if I continue to talk about loving him and he's done this horrible thing, that's that just isn't right. And we talked for a while and he said, I came up with this idea. I said, when I love somebody, I don't have to love everything that they do. In fact, there are lots of times when I think people I love have done things that have been very hurtful, or they shouldn't have done. Um, but I realize I still love them, even if they're imperfect. And we're all imperfect anyway. Um, and that he said, just that simple idea helped me through this. This isn't the same as the situation with your uh, sister, but we live better, I think, if we recognize that none of us are perfect,
Yes.
and we love the part of them that's as good as it can be.
Yep.
And there's some other things. Well, I don't have to work on forgiving that. That was just a mistake.
Yes.
That was wrong, and so on. And what happened in that situation was wrong. Somebody else did it, and you guys didn't do it.
No.
And you've got to work your way toward, if you're the kind of Christian that I think you are, being forgiving of the knuckleheads who did the killing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And you got to forgive your sister for having a hard time not blaming someone
Sure.
because it's just too horrible.
Yeah. It's
But it's
horrible.
not taking her to a good place. So
Yeah.
some kind of counselor, maybe a minister, a teacher, a
Yeah.
best friend, or somebody who's really good in that family cluster that's yours, can find a way to helping her to kind of forgive the world for
Sure.
having a situation where this guy wound up murdered.
Well, I tell
And
you, my door is always open to her or anyone else. I'm actually going to life coaching school right now as we speak
so you can do it.
to learn a thing or two, right? So
Yeah.
yes, and here next month or two, I'll be a certified international life coach as
Well,
well.
good for you.
Yeah. So you know, I'm working on it. It's a process, right? So Tom, once again, the author of Wisdom and Death Shadows, collected writings on how we grieve. Is there anything else that you can share with the listeners here on Men Speaking Out, episode 91, that you can share with the listeners, a takeaway, a nugget, or just something that you can give them before we end our show, sir?
Um, I think this, and I can point to something in the book. Um, People tend to think of sorrows, painful emotions, as things that need to be expressed. They encourage people to express it. Don't hold it in. Don't just grip it and let it kind of gnaw away at you. You got to express it. And I think there's a bit of wisdom in that. But I think the better wisdom is to recognize that emotions and sorrows are the deep part of you, your soul and your spirit, trying to tell you something about what you need and trying to appeal to something about the best in you that you got to connect with and enact, bring to pass. So it's not so much expressing that sorrows and emotions are wanting. They're wanting attention because they can teach you what's most important in your life and what's most important in what you need now. And in my little book, one of the sections of it about caring for people is
Mm.
about self-care, and taking care of yourself can be promoted by using what I call sorrow-friendly practices.
Yeah, I see that self-care through sorrow-friendly practices.
And,
Right
and,
there.
and,
Yeah.
and one of them is turning to others to hear you out and to talk with you, like we've been doing. And one of them is maybe keeping a journal where you write to
Mm.
yourself about what you're thinking and feeling. And others are using rituals, and people find in their religious practices rituals like prayer or trying to enact your faith in some way or another. Um, some people find practices of using the arts, expressing themselves, musically or in painting or in poetry or working with clay and shaping something. Keeping a journal of your dreams and seeing if your dreams are trying to tell you something.
There you go.
And there are others, and the chapter is all about that. And I think if we don't think of sorrow and the pain of it all as something we just want to get away from, but as something we have something to learn from, if we pay attention and are patient in listening to it, we can get guidance for getting beyond the worst of what we're experiencing. It doesn't all go away. You'll still miss them the rest of your life, but chances are you can also learn to love them for the rest of your life. That'll be better. And I think the best thing you can come to from doing things like this is gratitude. You feel a lot better in gratitude than in constant sadness. So if you just ask yourself, what am I really thankful for in this life that now ended? I want to hold on to that. I want to do something with that. I want it to shape me. I want it to help me. I want it to support me. Gratitude's a great place to go.
Sir, I'm once again, I am very, very honored to have you on this podcast, and Men Speaking Out. And where we talk to reveal, not conceal, for sure. And today you did a lot of talking to reveal. And once again, I just want to mention, I'm honored here with author Tom Attig from the book Wisdom in Death's Shadows, Collected Writings on How We Grieve. He also has a website called grievesheart.com. Please visit. And you have other books there too as well, right? You have other books you've authored on that website. So I definitely want to direct the listeners to that. And if you got it, you can share it on the screen if you like. I see you went and grabbed
something. I've got some. If anybody wants a heart-to-heart talk or body of reflections, I've got this little book called Catching Your Breath in Grief. And Grace Will Lead You Home is the title.
That's an audio book.
Well, it may be an audio book. I'm not sure that it is. But this is like a paperback, and it's got little chapters in it that are about half a page with a nature photograph to go with it, like that.
Awesome.
People can't read big books when they're in the midst of the worst of it.
Yeah.
But they can read 250 words and think about them.
There you go.
That's what this book offers. So if you go to my website or if you go to Amazon, you can find the books and make your choices. They're all good.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Tom, it's been a pleasure.
Can we continue when we go off the air?
We sure can. We can continue when we go off the air. Well, once again, listeners, and by the way, we have a listener. You shared the story about the young lady losing her sister.
Yeah.
She commented, "I really love that story." So people are listening and tuning in. So that's a good thing, right? So
yes,
I just want to say, Tom, I do appreciate you. Thank you once again for coming on Men Speaking Out. You have actually educated me and helped me quite a bit. And I'm sure I'm going to have listeners pinging me. And this podcast will be heard all over the world.
Good.
All over the world. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome, my friend. All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.